So for 2 years, I've been moving through one of the toughest and scariest seasons of my life. Over the course of this time, I've lost just about every cent I've ever earned in my life. Um, like I mentioned, it started with when I made the decision to move, and then the whole process of moving to this new state. But then there's been other things in the wake of that, and it's obviously too much to get into all of it here. But you know, despite all of this planning that I did and saving, and like I had made the decision to move at least a year and a half before I actually like set things into motion to actually do it. And that included saving and saving and saving and saving as much as I could. It included looking at anything that I was spending money on, wherever my bills were going, and like cutting things where I could, selling stuff that I own, like all of that stuff. And I was just trying to like accumulate what I could to build a good savings and cushion to be able to afford the move. And all these different other aspects. Planning, started to look for jobs as soon as I had made the decision, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to stay in the job I was in if I moved out of the state. I had to be a resident of California to remain in that job. So it's like despite all of that planning, and despite doing all of these things to really be as prepared as I could, it didn't really matter. um in the end, I can see now, I guess, that it never really nothing would have prepared or prevented some of what ended up happening, because it was necessary. And then after that, the sort of second season in this 2 year window of time was when I ventured into self-employment with my business. So I don't know what the opposite of the Midas touch is. Like, I don't know if there's a word for that, but it felt like I had that. Nothing seemed to work. I sent resume after resume after resume into void upon void upon void. I mean, most of the time I didn't hear anything back. If I did hear anything back, it was like, well, you meet all the qualifications and that's great, but we're going to go with a different candidate, or we're going to take another route. Like sometimes they would say some weird, vague thing like that. That's like, what does that even mean? Um, so it just, so there was that. And then when I did find another job, which was quite a while after we got here, so there was this whole period of just, absolute fear, stress, all that stuff before that. Then I ended up getting a job that was roughly a 50% pay cut from my prior job. So it was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like you're thirsty and somebody gives you like 2 ounces of water after you haven't had any water for like a week or something. I don't know. It was just like it was better than nothing, but it it was still, it wasn't going to cover bills. It wasn't cutting it and all of that. And then when it came to my business, it seemed like it was more of the same. I invested in coaches. I read books. I studied all these things I could find. I did e-courses, master classes, you name it. I like poured into it, to try to learn as much as I could, to, do all this training and figure out all these different things, what other people have learned, what are recommendations, practices that work, all this stuff. And I did all the things to no avail. Like it just, nothing I was trying was working. It was just like I said, it just, the more the time went on and that it kept happening, the more I was getting this feeling of like, I have like whatever the opposite of the Midas touch is or whatever. It was just really, it was very challenging, very difficult on many levels, as you might imagine. The accounts kept shrinking. I had many moments of terror and despair. I cried myself to sleep many nights. I questioned myself. I questioned my intuition. I questioned God at times. Like, why had he called me to do this? And then it wasn't working. Like, it was just there. There was just so many moments. And I went through this whole, um, another dark night of the soul, for the second time through my inner healing journey that I've been on. That one was particularly tough. And so just moving through all this stuff, right? And so while I went through all of this, I never turned away from God. I never like doubted God. I never, had one of those like Bruce Almighty moments where it was like, why me, God? Kind of, it wasn't, I never got into that space. It was like I still had this faith. I still had this level of trust and surrender, because I did know, even though I had these moments of questioning, deep down I knew, like, no, I know he was giving me the signs. I know he was nudging me to do this. I know I was called out of my job, and you know, he led me to do this. So it's like, I don't know what the reasoning is. I don't totally understand what's going on, but I trust God. And so I continued to have that through all of this. And even though I was experiencing all these challenges and I was having like month to month to month, it was like, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to make this work? What am I going to do? Somehow it worked out every month. Like these weird, random little things would happen and somehow it would work out. And somehow I would, you know, we would be okay. And the next month, you know, I'd proceed and go on. So it was like, while these other things were happening and I was having these experiences of being frustrated and going through all these like scary times with it, at the same time, God was still providing and supporting and all of that. But he was also, there was times where he was also really quiet. And I have come to understand that part of that was because of what, it was just that part of the journey for me to have to learn. And where he was leading me to, you know, rely more on my intuition, um, and tuning, going within myself. So I knew there had to be a reason for all this, even if I didn't understand what that reason was.